By the end of the 8th century, largely as a result of the three massive victories over the Eastern Romans, the Bulgars had successfully granted their new core territory in eastern Moesia over 1 century of peace. The four large shared population centers of Bulgars and Slavs grew consistently in population and wealth as a byproduct of this peace. Several decades of tribute flowing from Constantinople from 680 to around the 750s, as well as decades inclusion in Constantinople's international trade markets starting in 719 further fueled the growth of towns, cities, and the expansion of Bulgaria's influence as a formal institution, projecting out from the capital at Pliska. Simultaneously, the Bulgars and Slavs were undergoing two major processes which reflected in the military structures of Bulgaria, these being the rapidly undergoing transition of Bulgars from steppe nomads to sedentary state builders, and the syncretic fusion of Bulgars and Slavs into early Bulgarians. As mentioned in previous videos, the fairly equal partnership, cultural affinity between Bulgars and Slavs, and need for manpower already meant that there was massive intermingling among Bulgar and Slavic warriors as well as civilians. We can say that these two people were now passing the halfway mark of their fusion, so to speak, where some Bulgars still roam the northern plains of Bulgaria as migratory nomads with herds, while some Slavs lived in western Bulgaria and may not even have encountered Bulgars. Yet a growing and greater percentage of Slavs and Bulgars were emerging that lived together in cities and towns of eastern Moesia. Not only there, but Pliska's influence had extended along the Danube into central Moesia, where more and more Slavs joined Bulgaria, and also across the old mountains into Thracian cities and villages. These two processes combined with the military success and influx of wealth not only meant that the Bulgars and Slavs were capable of mobilizing a bigger military force due to growing populations, but this military included a growing percentage of heavily armored contingents. The Bulgars already had internal production of heavy armor in the form of hardened leather and scaled lamellar outerwear for the warrior class of boyars. However, in this period, the number of heavily armored horse archers increased from approximately 1,000 or slightly more during the inception of Bulgaria to approximately 4,000 by the end of the 8th century, giving the Bulgar cavalry greater shock capabilities as well as durability. This growth of armor was further fueled by the fortune of loot acquired from the massive victories at Ongau, Anchialis, and Vedegaba, some of which was equipped directly, while much was repurposed into internal armor and weapon production. Their Slavic federates living in the slopes and valleys of the mountains theoretically produced a greater number of mobile and versatile infantry. Yet in the 7th century, they usually lacked iron armor and discipline due to their decentralized and independent tribal societies, while accordingly excelling in ambush and mobility. Throughout the 8th centuries, however, with the aforementioned organization and military success under the Bulgar leadership, there was a proliferation of armor and weaponry among the Slavs, especially those who participated in battle and looted the Roman corpse fields. As such, the Slavic infantry contingents usually sent to join the Bulgar cavalry now also had more heavily armored contingents, who were also transitioning from irregular light infantry into regular infantry capable of pitched battle on top of retaining mobility and ambush tactics. Although the Slavs could theoretically mobilize tens of thousands of lighter infantry, they were usually limited by logistics to contributing about 3,000 men at the beginning of the Union, according to Theophanes, a figure which grew to about 10,000 by the end of the century. On a macro scale, the Bulgars and Slavs arduously over a century by protecting their core territories allowed for a new entity to emerge, where before these two peoples had distinct customs and identities that produced unique civil and military systems. Through their cultural fusion and shared state emerged the early Bulgarians, a new people that claimed both groups as their ancestors and justifiably produced a more sophisticated nation and army.